Hello, this is going to be a video on using Zbrush. If you're new to Zbrush, which you might be because you've been seeing all the recent Zbrush Summit posts, and you might think get it now whilst it's still relatively reasonably priced for the power of it. You're going to open up Zbrush and you're going to see this panel. This is the light box, kind of where all the projects, it's like the navigator, right, for all the tools and brushes and things are kept. Now, if you ignore this, then you might find yourself in a little bit of a predicament. The best thing to do at this point is to be in the project, which is default, and choose Dynamesh Sphere, right? It's kind of the best way to sort of start ZBrush, and then you can start just drawing, right? If you're using a mouse and you're not using a pen, then you're going to have a little bit of a problem with the pressure sensitivity, and you can press space bar to change the size and the intensity there. You can hold down Alt to draw in the way, and you can still make a pretty decent sculpt, and I think you could probably develop your hand-eye coordination and stronger wrist muscles using the mouse, but I do recommend getting yourself a tablet, even a cheap XP Pen one or a Huion. Wacom's are pretty good, they're solid, last a long time. So this little bar up here is the undo slider. You can sort of go back through time and see what you've been making, and so on and so forth, right? That's the basics of it. So you're starting to brush, you hold down Alt and you're brushing away, and you're starting to make some sort of face, and you can sculpt away. There's things like you don't want to see this ground plane, you can click on this thing that says floor. Now this is a custom UI. If you hold down Control on any button, at the bottom there it says button path draw : floor, so you have to draw, and then there's a subgroup called floor, I guess, or it's just there, right? There it is, right there. That's where that button lives, and all these buttons that you see outside of any of these menus, and some of these you can see are docked. So I'll undock these. I can actually free up the space, bum bum, bum bum, and now I've got like even more space. So I've basically customized this menu by going into preferences and config and enable customize, and I've even dragged that button out. So when that button is on, you can go into any menu, and you can hold down Control and Alt and drag that out anywhere that you like. If you don't like where it's gone, you just drag it back into the space, right? So once you've done that, like the best thing to take out is that enable customize button. You can have multiple copies of it as well. It's just like very unforgivable. Like you can move it once it's in there, you can move it, right? And you can get rid of it, you can throw it in there. So you can see I've already put that one in there, and store config. So you turn it off and store config, right? And it's going to remember all this, and you can just start to drag out those buttons that you use all the time. So yeah, you'll come into this and it'll give you a nice symmetrical setup. You can start sculpting in a face. You can hold down Shift whilst you paint, it makes the circle go blue. That's smooth mode. If you actually let go of Shift whilst you're still painting, it's more like it kind of redistributes the polys. Let me just show you that. So I do Shift F, it's going to come up with the wireframe. So I'll just do Shift and relax, right? So shift and smooth rather. So I'm just holding down Shift and painting, right? So do that, and I'll let go of Shift. I'm letting go of Shift halfway through. It's more trying to push the polys apart. See, that's me just holding Shift down, and I'll let go of Shift halfway. It's slightly different smoothing algorithm, right? And it can get you out of some situations of like pinching and things. So you see as I press Shift and let go of Shift, what's happening there. Let's do that again. Pressing it, letting go of it, pressing it, letting go of it. So it's still relaxing it, but it's just a slightly more unified algorithm, right? So Shift F will get you off the wireframe, and you might be thinking, well, how the hell am I going to model the rest of it? I just need to keep sculpting on it to get what I want. And yeah, I mean, each to their own if that's your approach. But there's lots of brushes, not just that single brush, but you can get quite far with it, and you know, get the most out of that current number of polys in your mesh. Mess around, change the brush size. So I'll hold down space and I can do that. I think you can also press S, but I've reassigned the hotkey. To reassign a hotkey, it's again Control and Alt, but you're not in this enable customize mode. You Control Alt and tap on a button, then it's waiting for your hotkey press. Then when you leave ZBrush, it will ask if you want to keep your hotkeys, and you just want to say yes, I want to keep hotkeys. So that's me playing with that smoothing algorithm change by continuously drawing and tapping on or letting go of Shift. Have to have been smoothing first, then I let go of it. It kind of does a better distribution, so I often use it. Usually do with and then without, just right away, just like redistribute the polys. Doesn't really matter, it's just became a habit for me that I do that. So now I've switched to a different brush. You see these brushes here? So that's part of the custom menu. If you press B, comes up all your brushes, and yeah, there's a daunting amount of brushes here. And yeah, they all do different things. Now if you press B, D, you'll get everything beginning with D. If you press B, then C, you get everything beginning with C. And you start to get used to what does what. Now my favourite ones is B-I-N, right? So B-I-N, bin, it's the inflate. So B, then I, everything beginning with I, then N, there's a letter there. And that gives me the ability to inflate. If I do it holding down Alt, I kind of start to like make a kind of cave and push the walls away. And I'm pushing the walls away there. Another good one is BMV, right? So you can also do BM, then click on it, right? BMV is move. So move lets me kind of pull things around based on the first polygon that I touch. So if that's the polygon I touch, now it's moving that bit. If I touch that polygon, it's moving that bit, right? So you kind of want to be in the area, right? If I want to pull and push move like towards me and away, it's going to do it based on, see the way the cursor is rotating. It's kind of like pointing its way around based on the faces that it's at. So all the faces have little kind of arrows pointing off them, like my nose. So they all have little arrows pointing off them, and that's what that circle there, the cursor's kind of following. So if I hold down Alt, I'm using the move brush. If I hold down Alt and then I drag to the right, it's pulling everything based on that radius, the radial fall off there, out of that original point. You see, that's kind of where I did it from. I can do it exactly from here as well. Hold down Alt and pull left and right, and it's doing its best to sort of pull it off the normal of those faces, right? It's a wee bit off, but you see it's the tilt of the brush there. So as it tilts, that's the kind of direction it's going to go, right? So you can kind of see it from the tilt of the brush. So you drag, so I'm holding down Alt and dragging to the right, and if I drag to the left, it goes in the way. So it's a cool little feature with the move brush. Another favourite one is BTD, is trim dynamic. Now trim dynamic, you have to watch it though, right? Trim dynamic is gonna flatten stuff, and it's made all this really flat. It's flattened everything to there, right? It's not got the ability to flatten the other side, because it's just flattened what it sees, and it's all kind of gone a bit thin. So you have to be careful with it, know how to use it. So use it at the end of things. See, it's flatten it there, and then a wee bit of smooth, and then see how that algorithm changed since I let go of Shift while still smoothing. So Shift will activate smooth, then I put the pen down, then I let go of shift, and now it's more like a kind of, it relaxes the geometry as well, kind of redistributes them. Right, so I'm just going to use trim dynamic on various little points here. You might be thinking, why am I still working in this resolution? This looks terrible, like a pixelated character or something. Well, you shouldn't really jump to higher resolutions just because you want one part to look good. There's still a lot of work to be done on the rest of this, where I can use this trim dynamic, and I'm just getting used to it. Play with it a bit, you know, play about with it, but make sure you do something to the whole model. To get, not just to get used to everything, but just to make sure you've covered the whole shape. Look around the whole model, you can see I've not done anything down here. I'm going to turn that floor off. Right, so I can do that move brush, so BMV, spacebar, get a nice big brush, hold down Alt, and I'm going to go here, I'm going to push left and right. You see I'm pulling this in or out. Right, do it the inflate way, BIN, hold down Alt, and just sort of scoop. Right, and then I'm going to use it without Alt and make this big sort of jaw, like a zygomatic bone there, and really just mess around. So with Alt is making it go concave, and without Alt is making it inflate. Right, and then I'm just going to use snake hook, so B, S, and if we just look for snake hook, that's there, S, so BSS. This brush performs best with Sculptris Pro, right? Why does it say that? And where is Sculptris Pro kept? So there's my icon for Sculptris Pro. It's under stroke Sculptris Pro. So stroke Sculptris Pro, and then it lives in there. That's the little icon. And why is that good? Well, when you paint with that, it will actually add geometry as it moves. So I'm going to do it without. I'll do Shift F to show you without. So, whoops. So let's do BSH. Sorry. Why is it BSS? That's snake sphere, right? Let's do B. I've never used that. BSH snake hook, but the same deal. It works better with Sculptris Pro because what happens is if we start to pull that out, is we are just pulling the existing geometry, right? Without Sculptris Pro activated. So if I activate it, look at those wings, and I do it now, it's dynamically adding little decimations, little tessimations, I guess they call it, extra geometry where it's needed, and it's kind of dependent on the brush size as well. If I make the brush smaller, it's gonna give me geometry there, and I get this really nice organic. See how small that is? I can make it so small that it will even crunch that down just to cope with what I'm trying to do. It's a wee bit lumpy, but it's still pretty cool. Right, so I started this with that sphere. Right, I'm going to press comma, that brings up the light box again, or there's a button for it. So I started with this sphere and it's a Dynamesh sphere. So what is Dynamesh? Dynamesh is a lattice projected thing that's just let down the planars, right? It's just going to make these lattice lines directly, and that's why you can see all these little squares, right? And when I get to the corner, they get a bit kind of confused whether it's supposed to be a square or a triangle, right? So it's kind of like it's better for a cube in a way. It's like that. So I can easily switch subtools here. If I want to keep that, I'm just going to dock this tool. So that's the little dock button there. Click that, and I want to keep this subtool. So I'll go subtool, and I can then do append a cube, right? And I can switch to the cube, and I have a little button here called solo. Right, I've made the shortcut to that different from the native thing. I created it as S, but S actually changes the brush size, but I find pressing spacebar is a lot kind of just as easy. So S gives me solo because that's what it kind of stands for, S for solo. So I like that. To make a hotkey, again, you just do Control, Alt and tap, and then press the key that you want. The same hotkey is already assigned to this interface item. Yes, it is. Okay, so now I've got these two subtools because I used that append button to append whatever shape I want. Right, so now I've got this cube, and as you can see, it's it's got these kind of points at the top and bottom, these poles, right? So it's kind of fine. But what if I converted this to Dynamesh? Now Dynamesh lives inside Geometry, Dynamesh, right? You might be thinking, why all this stuff in these menus? You barely use it, and it's like different pathways for different people depending what they're making. Hard surface, organic, different approaches to making different things. It's kind of like going into a sweet shop and trying to make a pick and mix, but there's just so many sweets. So yeah, we are literally kids in candy shop with this software, and it's great when you get used to it. It takes a little while, but it's really rewarding, and you'll just have your workflow, and that's what ends up making your custom menu. And I've noticed that a lot of people that make custom menus, they end up with really similar buttons. Probably half of these buttons are common, right? Subdividing, Z-remeshing, Dynameshing. I've got crease stuff up here, stuff to do with the camera here, some information, different things to do with projection and mirroring and grouping, and I kind of get used to where they are. They're not completely organized like OCD organized, but I start to get muscle memory of where they live. Well, that button's there, that button's there. So you speed up, and then making shortcut keys on your keyboard using the hotkey thing is also cool, because I've got hotkeys for a few of these, like clay build up is Y, standard is G, DMA standard is I, trim dynamic is T, clay tubes nope, snake hook is J, move is M. I've replaced a few of the built-in keys, but to be honest, I don't really use those, and I'll find them through the menu if I needed to. So going back to Dynamesh, Dynamesh lives in here, and I'm just going to click Dynamesh, and as you can see, what happens is it's this lattice, right? It's a nice lattice. There's a square, there's a square, there's a square. It's a wee bit wonky in places, just a wee bit wonky in places, and look, there's a pinch of a little triangle there. It's not the most perfect thing. In fact, if I turn off blur completely and try Dynamesh, still not perfect, right? Still similar results. It's just a kind of lattice that gets projected on. It's not super neat, but the point of it is it gives you something really quick to play about with. So imagine it like being a bit of clay. The lower the Dynamesh resolution, the easier it is to manipulate that clay. And you see how I updated it there. I'm just going to turn off Sculptris Pro. I don't want it to do any extra geo. So I'll just do a little smooth on it. Then hold down Control and just drag, and that's now you got the Dynamesh re-resolved to that shape. It's re-resed itself, right? And you just need to like take it as a given that it does weird things with the topology. That's what Dynamesh is. It's just some friendly plasticine, sort of easy to manipulate. If you make a change to it, redrag, it calculates new geometry. But as you can see, even with or without, I get this steppage, right? Especially at diagonals. If I was to like really pinch this up, I'm using the pinch, right? I've got it shortcutted to the letter K, but BPI is pinch, and that's like, as you can see, it's pulling that geometry together. Shift F will show you the wireframe. It's also this one, right? You can click on like fill or line and fill, and you can see different modes. Just two little kind of extra buttons at the top. Everything's just hidden inside itself like a fractal with ZBrush. It's kind of like super organic, and you get used to it after a while. Right, so if I do that and do Shift F to come out, you can see, ignore the occasional triangle, it's just overlapping itself. You can tap it with a bit of smooth and it'll go away. It's just the way it's calculating the rendering of faces. So there's me pinched up some sides, right? super sort of nice and crisp at distance, right? But if I re-Dynamesh, it just doesn't care about it anymore. Notice how the geometry is all tight there. I re-Dynamesh, it just goes back to that same lattice. Now I could bring the resolution up and redo it, right? And it's kind of kept it a bit better. It's still got a little bit of stepping, but I've got all this extra geometry here I might not have wanted. So there's other things you can use, right? And the last thing you want to use is basically Decimation Master, but I'll show you anyway, just to show you what it is. So it's under Z plugin, because it's one of those things that got added to Zbrush as Zbrush was evolving, and it ended up in here. I think more likely things end up integral now. Sometimes, apart from, it depends if it's its own little kind of module or something, like polygroup it. But they're all kind of like here. So you click on Decimation Master, and I'm just going to do 20k polys, right? It's going to crunch 3,300 polys to 20k polys, right? Let's see what happens, right? And it did it. It turns everything into triangles, which is fine. All polygons are two triangles anyway. You know, triangles exist. You just have to know that there's always a kind of division line that either goes that way or that way, and that can affect the way things rock and roll. So, yep. So bear in mind that that's a common thing with 3D graphics, is that everything's a triangle and it's only the verts that you control. So now I can sort of smooth that out. Right, let's try that again. Let's try decimate to 20k, and it did not let me do it. It goes even. Yeah, it did it. Okay, right. So that is another option, and it never went to 20k polys. Let's try custom 5k. Let's divide it a couple of times just to show you, right? So divide it a couple of times, pinch it up. You see there's new geometry on that, right? So I'll pinch that up. Let's pinch up some of this side as well and smooth it a bit. I'm just using the pinch BPI. Right, nice crisp edge. And then I'll use the decimate custom. So I'm at 80,000 points up here, and I'll press 5, so down to 5k custom. It's crunching that down, and we're at 5k polys. Now what happens now is it retains the geometry kind of where it needs it, and then it starts to lose it where it doesn't need it, where it's kind of flatter areas, right? But that is by no means good topology, right? It's really erratic. Good for rocks and some, you know, broken crystals, and just if you want to sort of get something out of really, you know, get some cracked shapes like this for free, then it's kind of good for that stuff. Right, you get some interesting stuff like that happening. You can sort of carry on working with that, but Dynamesh is kind of there to just crunch down the geometry count to use as a reference mesh for retopology, for 3D printing, for smashed up rocks, for effect. As you can see, it doesn't give you the best topology. Now there is something else called Z-Remesher for that, which is just below here, right? Z-Remesher is kind of new, so all these things are like, they never really had the need for these things until a bit later. It used to be you would just subdivide the mesh, pull it around, subdivide, pull it around, go and retopologize it, reproject with better topology, subdivide and work in the detail and so on, right? So that's kind of still people's main workflow, and that's kind of habitual. So Z-Remesher gives you a bit of a bridge between those, because you can basically take some crap geometry like this, hit Z-Remesher, and it's going to give you something that's a bit nicer, but it also loses a lot of the features. Again, you can put the target poly count up, Z-Remesh it, and it will try to retain some of that shape. You can also duplicate the subtool, go to the one above it, because that's the one you're going to make new topology for. Geometry, ZRemesh that. So now we get a more unified topology everywhere. Better than it's better than Dynamesh because it's not restricted to that planar lattice. If I do Dynamesh real quick, you'll see that it's tried to do these ups, downs, and lefts and rights, and that's even more jiggly wiggly compared to that. It's still a bit bad in places, so don't depend on ZRemesh to do good topology ever, ever, ever. Right? It might be fine at doing a little cylinder or something. It might give you a, I don't know, 20% start to some retopology, but you still want to do most of it manually to get it perfect for animation, to get it just so that it flows nice and you can definitely nail your target poly count. So ZRemesher is kind of good for like that subdivision progress where you're like, okay, well, I've made this really janky mess, but I kind of want to have a little bit better topology. So I've done ZRemesher to this. I go to my subtool. Because this lives above it, I can use project. So I go down to project, yes, another little subcategory. I'm just going to hit project all, and that tries its best to project what's underneath it. It's already sort of projected, so I've defied a couple of times. I like to do it twice to start with. Project all and see how it does. Right, it's projected what it can see of this. Right, anything below it, it's projected that onto it, and that's actually not too bad. Any little defects like that, just smooth them out. Right, smooth them out a bit here and there, just give them a little smooth. They're just kind of like this raycast gone a wee bit awry. You can play about with these numbers as well. No idea what to do or how to explain what they do. I just know that playing around with them gives you a slightly different thing. So project all again. If you do make adjustments, just make small adjustments so it's kind of like it's got these bullet holes in them and spikes everywhere. So whatever I did there wasn't good. Right, and it's got a different set of them. Let's change the mean. I could be here all night trying to work out what's going to give me the best result, but you will get these now and again, right? Little defects, right? It's all trying to get the information from this yucky decimated one. So I can delete that now, right? Once you're kind of done with it, you got this one now with subdivisions, right? And that's good because you can work in different levels. Like this one, you might say, I want to change a bit of the base shape a bit more. So I'll do that. Let's use the trim dynamic, BTD, go up a few stages, and then it will kind of like get the details back from that higher resolution one. And that's kind of like the basis of sculpting for a while, until you get to the point where you no longer like the topology of this. It's not good enough. You're going to make your own topology. So I can ZRemesh this if I wanted, but when you ZRemesh, you lose a lot of details. It's not good at like keeping detail in certain places unless you tell it to. You can paint detail, you get it to retain certain parts, but the best way to go is just to manually retopologize, bring in the new mesh. So let's say this was your new mesh, this top one, similar idea. Let's just do, for the sake of argument, ZRemesh, bring that down. Okay, let's just do half of that. Right, it's not great, right? Exactly, it's not great. So let's just say this was your retopologized mesh. It's still too much geometry. Let's just half it again. So I've got all these buttons for ZRemesh out up here somewhere, right? So let's say that, and then you've got to divide it a couple of times. I usually always divide it twice before I project the high details. I don't know why that's a habit, that just seemed to become a habit. And then I'll use my project, where do you live, where do you live, I've not used you in a while, here, right? And you see it's got all these misses, right? It's missed a bit, so I'll increase the distance. Is that too high? Ooh. Is it too low? Too high? Too low? Right, if it doesn't quite reach, what you can do is change the color of it, right, and then fill the object. So if you go to color, fill object, and then turn off the solo, go to the other one. I'm just going to hide that one for now, right? Use a little Y there, and I'm just going to use yellow or something, right? And then fill that object as well. Color, fill object. So now I've got the two objects, and what I can do is the one that it's got the topology that I want to keep is the red one, right? And I just want to like pull it out a bit, right? Or I could go down to the low subdiv and do project first, right? So let's do project all, and that's probably a bit better. Go up a subdiv, project all, smooth out any of the bad bits where it's missed, or inflate them a bit. Even better is to inflate them a bit. So I can kind of use that. Why is that inflating like that? That's not inflating, that's white. Or move and then pull some of the low poly out, you know, manually. It's also quite a good idea just to get it close, right? Or you can go down to deformation, inflate, and just bring it up a bit. See, there's a hidden slider above the actual orange slider. If you go above here, you can't really see it, but it's like for some buttons, maybe not this one, but for some buttons it's like a little fine-tuned version of it, right? And then I'll do project all a bit better. Divide again. Oh, I'm already there, so it's got one. Project all. Doesn't quite reach everything. So smoothing and inflating is kind of your friend there. Constantly pressing the wrong button. Okay, project all. Divide again. Project all. Get closer. Again, it's missing a few bits there, I think. Project all. That's too much now. Project all. A bit closer. Right, starting to get there. Divide again. Project all. And that's you now at a point where you've got new geometry, better than before, but stop using ZRemesher at some point. You know, you really want to get your own topology in there. There's loads and loads of features of ZBrush that would take a light year traveling at the speed of light. It would take a year then. I don't know why I said that. It would take a really long time to get you to go that far in it, and you have to sort of sit down and make stuff and try things. There's other common things that I use, like under deformation, you've got mirror, right? That'll flip the. It doesn't work on things with multiple subdivs. So what you can do actually is go to the highest one, delete lower, right? Now you can use mirror, right? And that will kind of flip it left and right, right? But you also have the ability to get those back by using geometry, reconstruct subdiv, 2, 3, 4, right? And I've got them back again. I've got the flipped version of this mesh. So there's that. I can also move it off to the side. Don't know if this will work. Yeah, it should work. And I can go to modify topology, mirror and weld. Can that be applied to things with multiple subdivs? So delete lower, mirror and weld. And because like I've not actually welded any points together, I don't end up with an odd number that it can't really reconstruct the subdiv. So it's good that I've kept that distance in that sense. I don't want them to be touching when I don't want them to weld, because that will change the poly count and I won't be able to use reconstruct subdiv. But this time I will, because the numbers are still even. They're just doubled because it's two the same. I can go right down and I've got two objects. And if I press X, I can work in symmetry and start to pull bits around. Go up a subdiv, do Shift F again, and start to make something kind of strange. I'm going to add it on to this one, so I'll just unsolo that, and that's what I've been making, some new wings. So I can press E, and that will actually let me scale it down, move it up, rotate it. You see, this is all working in symmetry as well, which is cool. And scale that axis, scale in that axis, scale all axis, move it around, rotate it, unlock so that I'm just moving the gizmo, move the gizmo where I want it, lock, rotate it. It's doing some weird stuff here because it's kind of got sangled up in itself. Yep, I completely broke it. Right, don't worry, there's an undo button, stuff like that. Reason why that happened, there's some sort of welding going on with this, and I don't know if that is an option that I remember. I don't know if it's here or is it under the, some kind of auto welding happening. I don't think it's that. If I put that down at 1, so it's like the Matrix where, how can you speak, Mr. Henderson, if you don't have a mouth? That's what it's like. I forget why it's actually doing that. Instead of just cutting through itself, and I think that's just a Zbrush thing. Answers in a postcard if you know why it does that, but it would be cool if it didn't. So it's automatically welding, so you have to be careful when you get too close. It's not actually welding together, it's just sticking to itself. And then if you use smooth, you can kind of get it to unstick. So I think that might have to be an option later on. Another last thing to show you, if I'm going to use trim dynamic on this side, right? Trim dynamic normally does this sort of thing, but why does it do that? Right? Why is it going weird? Do you think? Well, one, it's because I got the symmetry on, right? So what I'm doing to this side, and I'm actually pulling from behind myself. The thing that this brush is doing is like flattening this, but it's got like an infinite sort of projectile from behind it, and it's pulling some of the thing that's happening here with it. So what you want is something called backface mask. If you go into brush masking, again in another menu, and go to backface mask, right? And I've actually put that down in my menu, and I don't even know where it is anymore. There, it's there. Okay, so now it's not going to affect anything behind it, right? And you would think, why is that not on by default? Well, it would be good if it remembered it as well. And I think you can actually go and edit like config files and stuff like that, so it remembers it, right? But this is no good because I've not done it to that side. So let me just undo, bring in symmetry by pressing X. So you see it's working correctly now, right? It's not projecting onto itself or being affected by symmetry. But what if I did that to one side and not the other, and I forgot all about it? I was like, okay, I'll just do that. Oh, I forgot to do it on that side. Now there's a couple of options. There's Smart Resim, which is under deformation, Smart Resim, right? And it will do its best to give you the same on the other side. You might have to mirror it first to get the side you want. Cannot do that to multiple subdivs. Okay, let's just delete lower, do Smart Resim. It'll take longer if there's more geometry, if I'm right. So let's do that. Yeah, it's gave me something, right? Let's do, so I flipped it around first with Smart Resim, and it's kind of gave me something a wee bit in between, right? It's not done exactly. So what I can do, let's say I wanted to keep this one. That still looks quite cool again. fabric wrapped over something. So I wanted to keep this one, and I want a symmetrical version. So my symmetry's off, and if I do Control, Shift and Alt and drag, I get this red box, and that basically means hide the mesh, right? Hide that whole mesh. It's still there, it's just hidden, right? And now I need to get rid of it completely. So I go to, let me just see where it is. So, Tool Geometry, okay, Tool Geometry, and it's Delete Hidden. It sits here, right? It's another button in the middle of the haystack of buttons. You start to get used to where it is. If you're going to use it more than once, twice, thrice, enable that customize, drag it out and put it somewhere where you're going to use it. That's what ZBrush is all about, is the customization, the pathways that you can use to get from A to B to C to D to Z brush. And you can then basically have what you want. Where was I? Oh yeah, delete hidden. So click delete hidden, and now you want the symmetrical version. You just go down to it's actually here, isn't it? Mirror and weld, makes a copy of itself, throws it to the other side. So you've kind of got that back, right? Someone's going to tell me there's another approach to this, but I've not really used anything other than that. And yep, that is going to wrap up this video. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoy using ZBrush, and I'll catch you soon. Bye.